Day 3 was a focus on the American Airborne sector. So we started in San Mary-Glise. This is a fairly famous American paratrooper town that was captured on D-Day and made famous by the movie The Longest Day with the hanging paratrooper. And this town constantly has a mannequin in paratrooper garb dangling from the steeple of the church. So we're in the square in front of the church. Here is a better view of that American paratrooper hanging off the church. And our tour guide told us some really dramatic stories about this misdrop of American paratroopers into the town square here. And that will be on a video by itself following this one. So if you want to hear those stories, that's there. Very interesting stuff happening. And this is a kind of a photo from 80 years ago compared to now, and as you'll see, once again, almost nothing at all has changed. We'll get back to that shortly. This is inside the church. Right when you walk in and turn around, there's a stained glass of these American paratroopers as part of the church now. So a lot of detail in this. You have the reserve chute with the ripcord here, the pistol pouch, the daggers in the boots, right? It even has them holding onto their risers as they descend. Yeah, and there was a lot of this too. Most of the churches had some kind of stained glass commemorating this moment. Here's another in the same church, actually. There were many monuments throughout the entire trip, and I am kind of leaving most of them out, but this one I liked because it says at the top, "In remembrance of the airborne spirit, Overlord, June 1944," and it has the killed and wounded for each of the units, the 82nd, the 101st, and the British 6th Airborne. As mentioned in a previous video, much of the battle damage has been preserved, so this is a wrought iron fence next to the church that has bullet gashes in the wrought iron, and one of the tops has been shot away, and they just leave it as is. This is a boulevard where, as you'll soon see, nothing has changed. So here's that same boulevard that's behind the tour guide right now, and here's a better angle. So very much the same, right? Back and forward here. Okay. Here's another section of the street not far from the church. As you can see, this white shuttered window here matches with this and the peaked roof and these double windows. Again, I started doing less of this once I realized basically nothing at all has changed in 80 years. This is the town hall, and even though it says Hotel de Villa, it's actually the town hall. And there's, of course, photos from when it was occupied by the Germans. And we went inside, and they have this flag on display, and it's the flag that was flown once the town was captured on D-Day. It's one of the first towns to be captured for the Allies on D-Day. And this pretty much wrapped up our visit to San Mary-Glise. The tour guide did tell some pretty awesome stories about Lieutenant Turnbull that defended the road north of San Mary-Glise. I'll just have a map here so we can kind of see what we're looking at. But about 25 paratroopers defended the north against fierce German counterattacks. They had to defend from Germans from the south. And then, as you'll soon see, there was a huge and dramatic fight out west near the Lafayette Bridge, which is our next stop. Lafayette Bridge. So this is one of the fiercest small unit actions of the war. At least that's what we were told, or what I've heard. And this is sort of the layup to this story. There's these flooded fields, a causeway that runs between the town of Coquigny and Lafayette, the Lafayette Bridge here. The Americans coming out of St. Mary-Église capture the bridge. The Germans coming out of Coquigny launch an immediate counterattack with 4 tanks supported by infantry. But they're coming down this funnel, right? So the Americans are waiting for them with bazookas, and they managed to knock out. Here's a kind of a good photo, and the Americans were right up on the bridge, and these German tanks came down. Well, captured French tanks, but manned by Germans, came down this road, and 3 out of 4 tanks were knocked out very quickly by bazookas, and the last tank was mounted by a paratrooper, had the hatch propped open and grenades thrown in to knock it out. So the Germans suffered pretty badly in this counterattack. Our tour guide has this modern photo with the approximate locations of the tanks overlaid into it, so you can see how close these tanks came before they were destroyed. That probably has more to do with the range of the bazooka than anything else. And then here's the actual photo taken from the position of the first German tank that was knocked out, and you see the last 3 here. So let's just go back. So that photo was taken by where this first tank is, and then that photo is of the last 3. Okay. And then it became almost entirely an infantry fight until the very end. This is just a map showing that German attack. The Americans are on the south side. The German tanks came here, supported by infantry. You can see them kind of following the tanks. And then the area to the left and right are very, very flooded, so you can't, it's impassable. This is sort of the final attack, but the battle apparently seesawed throughout the day, and so there's a lot of drama here with both sides giving each other a lot of hurt. But it turns out across the flooded area there was a bunch of paratroopers kind of stuck in this orchard called Tim's Orchard, and we actually stopped by later to visit that. And so they were able to launch attacks into the Coquigny from the flank against the Germans. There was a Medal of Honor recipient in the fighting here in Coquigny specifically, and that's a monument to the Medal of Honor winner, Charles de Glopper. The story is pretty fantastic. Sounds like a Hollywood movie. And this is Tim's Orchard. It's still, again, everything's still there, so there's not much to see. It's just a bunch of trees, but they have this monument there. And then we kind of left that area, but I'll finish that story and say that the Americans were reinforced by units coming off of Utah Beach, so with armor support they shelled Coquigny and then used smoke rounds to put smoke as much as they could on that side, and then a very reluctant group of glidermen were ordered over the causeway and to attack into the town, and suffered very badly, but they did end up taking this apparently very vital area and securing it. So then we moved to Shanley's Hill, and this I thought would be more interesting than it was. I always thought Shanley's Hill was it's a 30-foot high, what I thought was basically a mountain that this fellow defended against the Germans at a strategic crossroads not far from Lafayette Bridge. And no, it was actually really unimpressive. There is just a flat area, just a bunch of fields, and okay, they named this crossroads after Thomas Shanley for what he did there. The tour guide didn't have too much to say about it. This is a bombed out house in Coquigny, I believe. So this is what it was in 1944, and then of course they patched it back up, but basically leave it the same. More battle damage in the graveyard at Coquigny. This is actually a bullet stuck into the wrought iron, so I thought that was kind of neat. Yeah, there's a close-up. And then more information about the battle is here, so I read that. Okay, so then we moved out to another area, and this was kind of something the tour guide was quite proud of. This is private property, but this was the chateau that Rommel held a very important meeting with regards to the defense of Normandy, and so you can see the man walking out of these very same doors, right? So it's been set up by the private owner for tourists to come in and check out. And he's got these cutouts in the door, in the windows there, and you can walk inside, and it's kept very much the same as it was in 1944. So this is the interior of the house. And then we moved and visited roughly 3 or 4, at least 3, but I think it was 4. I don't know what else to call this, but like sites dedicated to the crashed C-47 aircraft. And so there were 21 planes, 21 C-47s filled with paratroopers that were shot down on D-Day, and each one essentially has a memorial of one size or another. And these are the various memorials. I really liked this one because it has an imprint of a C-47 in the ground, and then behind it are trees for every one of the fatalities, sort of the symbol of new life, etc., etc. This is very well kept. And we're actually standing on an embankment. This was the amount of earth that was pushed up by this crash. And so here's a better view of the trees. And one for each death on the crash. And each of these sites has, or most of these sites have a placard with a photo of the aircraft, complete with who was on board. And usually I feel like it had their fate, but I think everyone was killed on this particular plane crash. Here's another memorial. This one was interesting because this is Lieutenant Meehan's plane. You can see his name here, First Lieutenant Thomas Meehan from Easy Company. And this is actually depicted in Band of Brothers with a C-47 plowing straight into the earth and exploding. And that's essentially what happened here. So, and just behind this placard is the field where Lieutenant Meehan's plane crashed from Band of Brothers. And here's yet another memorial to one of these really sad events. This field contained one of the crashes. Okay, and then this was the sister bridge to the Lafayette Bridge. It's called Chef DuPont. There was much less bloodshed over this bridge. So 2 bridges west of Saint-Mary-Église were captured eventually. And I like this one especially, though, because it showed, our tour guide pointed out, this is what the flooded fields would have looked like around Lafayette. Yeah, there's a house back here that was kind of integral to the Germans for trying to defend this bridge insofar as they were able to. But otherwise, this was much less bloodshed when compared to the other bridge. Here's a map of the movements in the brief battle for Chef DuPont. And this is Brecourt Manor. This is, again, made famous in Band of Brothers for Richard Winter's attack on the 4-gun battery. And the 4-gun battery is on private property, and it's beyond the field here. It's not this field, it's the next field over. Now, happily, it doesn't look like much. You're not missing much. What you see is kind of what the whole Norman countryside looks like, but the tour guide and I are looking at a map that they kind of set up as a memorial to the action here, and of course here's this little memorial to the participants of the battle. And then we went to Saint-Côme-du-Mont, which was, I'm sorry, it was Sainte-Marie-du-Mont. So we backed out of Chef DuPont, drove east. We visited the Holdy Battery area, which was essentially a carbon copy of the Band of Brothers assault. There's another 4-gun battery, but a different set of paratroopers knocked out those 4 guns, and that was called the Holdy Battery. And then we entered Sainte-Marie-du-Mont, which is south and east of Saint-Mary-Église, and we're slowly going to make our way towards Carentan, which is down here, by the end of the day. So this was more or less kind of just the tour guide was more or less interested in showing us photos that match these different areas in Saint Marie du Mont. There's a World War I memorial. And one of our final stops before finally going to Carentan was Audeville, and this is a semi-famous location because this is where these two American medics stayed in a church and treated wounded from both sides, despite the fact that the town changed, control changed several times. So if the Germans were outside, it didn't matter. They didn't retreat when the Germans took over. They kept tending the wounded. And although we didn't take any photos of the inside of that church, here it is, the outside of it. The blood stains and a lot of the battle damage, even inside the church, has been preserved. There was a dud shell that landed amidst the wounded in there. The confessional has some bullet holes in it. It was really, really bizarre. Angeville, that's the name of it. Okay, and then we made our way towards Carentan, and this is something that's kind of near and dear to me because I read this paratroopers 4-book series when I was a kid growing up by Donald Burgett, and he mentions this, the corner with the dead guy in the tank, or the dead man's corner, and sadly, one of the first reconnaissance units was an M3 Stuart that was knocked out by the Germans, and it was right on the corner of this very important straightaway into Carentan. So this is the actual photo of the poor guy's tank, but that was what it was colloquially known as amongst the American soldiers, was the dead man's corner. In front of the tank, this is what that tank would have seen, this very long, again, causeway with flooded fields to both sides leading into Carentan. And this is the famous Purple Heart Lane, which has nothing to do with Easy Company yet. This is the northern attack into Carentan. Easy Company came at it from one of the flanks at the same time, or roughly the same time. This was a very dramatic moment in the capture of Carentan, and much like Lafayette Bridge, American soldiers and paratroopers had to charge down this road, and well, they don't call it Purple Heart Lane for nothing. They actually fixed bayonets and charged. There's a story about the Medal of Honor winner, Lieutenant Colonel Cole. And as you can see in the photo here, I think we're in modern day Carentan. But anyway, they had to charge down this road in flooded fields both sides, and it was fairly easy to hit them as they came. So now we're looking at it properly. We're in looking at it from the Carentan side, and off to the right is the road. This would have been a flooded field, but now there's a memorial here. Cole's bayonet charge, Purple Heart Lane off to the right. Oh yeah.
And as they approached, suddenly German fire triggered on them.
Yeah.
And you must imagine that except a building like this, all of this wasn't there. You had ditches by the side of the road, which is also necessary in this area because we are in a marshy area for water drainage. And what is still a bar today, by the way, even though the name has changed, that's where Easy Company entered Carentan.
Okay.
Right there.
Cool.
Running down that street, which is also was already a road. And as they got here, after knocking out the German snipers from this building,
Yeah.
they turned that way, which was leading them back to the center of Carentan.
So I feel like the series did a really good job of showing how it really was, all the way to the end where this, he said snipers, I think there was a machine gun actually in this building here shooting down the road. So yeah, very interesting. And then we entered Carentan proper, and there was a lot more of these, nothing has changed type photos. So many that I kind of just selected a few to present for this video. This is battle damage on one of the houses that they haven't fixed. You can see quite a bit got taken out here, but they didn't patch it. So after looking around at Carentan for a while, we moved out of the town to where Easy Company fought the Battle of Bloody Gulch, which is also in the Band of Brothers series. And on the way there, we crossed a Bailey Bridge from World War II, and here's what that looked like.
Paint on it.
It's an actual Bailey Bridge from World War II.
Bailey Bridge from World War II.
Wow. Oh, yeah.
Is that special?
Yeah, that's super cool.
And now a nice view of the Carentan Canal.
Oh, yeah. A Bailey Bridge is a pre-made bridge that could be quickly deployed, and it was very surprising and a little weird to see one that was still being used regularly 80 years later. And finally, we arrived at Easy Company's battle against the Germans outside of Carentan, and I have a video. The thing to notice is that most of this battle was fought from the American side from essentially a sunken road with embankments on both sides. So as you'll see, it wasn't such a flat ground fought from foxholes, but one in which the Americans could kind of fight it from complete cover.
With on one side the Germans attacking, and on the other side the Americans defending. This is the line, but we are on the American side, okay? Carentan is over there, with the precise positions held by the elements of the 506, with on one side here Easy Company, that was pretty close to the railroad, which one bridge is visible down there.
Wow. So this is a better picture of understanding how Easy Company was positioned during that fight with the Germans. They would have been on this embankment shooting over it at the Germans attacking them across the field to the right of this picture. And that pretty much concluded day 3. We did stop at a few other memorials, one to something called the Filthy 13, but that was pretty much it. So this was a long day, but a very fun day to be out and touring the Normandy battlefields. That's it for this video. The fourth and final will be about the British sectors.